mode, you should have a button that, yep.
Thanks, everybody. We'll get started in just a minute or two, letting people attend.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's just give one more minute for, I see people are still joining in. So let's just give a minute and we can get started. All right, so let's just get started. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I'm not sure where everyone is dialing in. I see people coming from all over the place. So thanks again for joining. This is ControlUp XenTegra technical deep dive webinar on ControlUp and how to change user expectation from being more reactive to proactive. And we have joined by two guests from ControlUp who will be getting, just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Moin Khan and I'm Chief Technology Officer for XenTegra. Agenda for this webinar is I will quickly introduce who we are, why we are here. And before we do that, I will let our guest from ControlUp introduce themselves, and then we can dive right in. Justin?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Justin Thurlow with ControlUp, and with me today we have Trenton Tai, who is one of our technical marketers, going to be doing the majority of the presentation. So thanks, Moin. If you want to kick us off with a little bit of an agenda and a start, and then I'll speak back up when we transfer it over to us.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. So to start with who we are, XenTegra, we are something that our CEO calls us WAR 2.0. We are a partner to ControlUp, and one of the things that we strongly believe in community building, and this is something that Andy Whiteside, who is a CEO of a company, he started a company back in 2012 with the vision and goal that a partner is not only someone who is selling product and selling services, but someone who is a true community builder. So this is the goal that we believe in. We believe in a business model that is building community and then creating a solution that serves the community. What that means is not only talking about the product, but we talk about the overall solution. We talk about how solution supports your journey, how it supports your vision goal, and how it enables you to do your work. This is something that where we started with most of the WAR, who has become more transactional. They come in, they talk about product, they can talk about anything that they're selling, but it is more on a transactional level. We focus more on a solution. It is more solution-driven approach, starting with the stack that we have, which is the entire end-user computing stack. We focus on a solution and technology that complements the solutioning that we are putting in place. As any other value-added resellers, we have three different line of businesses. We have solution. This is where we do digital workspace, digital services. cloud solutions from the solution-based approach perspective, getting into services where we have consulting services, managed services, and advisory services. We sell resell products, product renewals, and cloud workspace. These are some of the partners that we work. Now, again, we don't work with anyone and everyone. All these partners that we work with, they are key and strategic partner to us. And these are all the partners that we use internally in-house. One of the things that we strongly believe in is we have to try the solution before we can go and become evangelist and we start talking about it. So all these solutions, starting with ServiceNow, Nutanix, ControlUp, all these solutions, we use it internally in-house, and this is what we promote, and we sell as a service to our customer. With that, I will pass it on to our guests to talk about ControlUp. And Trenton, there you go. You can just dive right in.
Awesome.
Thanks, Moin.
There we go. All right.
So, Trent, I'll just kick it off just very briefly. ControlUp is a technology that we're kind of a kindred spirit with XenTegra, much like Andy Whiteside. We also got our start in the early days with Citrix and remote computing. SmartX was the name of the company about 15 years ago as a Citrix reseller, and they developed a tool to really monitor the end user experience. ControlUp has now grown pretty significantly to thousands of customers worldwide. It's a global organization with 24/7 office support. We have some very large Fortune 500 customers that are on the logos on the bottom of this page. Offices across the US, Europe, and Israel, and we're all kind of working from anywhere. The company is really focused on managing the end user experience in an end-to-end way. And it's kind of a unique value proposition, is to be able to have one kind of single pane of glass from which you can analyze the user experience, correlate different events across all of these different technologies, and also leverage that same tool to be able to remediate and fix problems, and even go so far as to be able to automate the solution. From the detection of things like print spooler stopping to the automatic solution of restarting that print spooler service. And the technology has grown much beyond just Citrix to all different types of physical endpoints, virtual desktops, VDI, and desktop as a service. Understanding kind of the employee's use case directly with kind of an employee-centric view. Software as a service and web-based applications, monitoring the performance of websites, network locations, network throughput, application load time, application response time, all the way down to today's newest technologies, which really monitor and manage a physical endpoint from anywhere, including the performance on the technology we're using to have this broadcast. So we now monitor the performance of Teams as well as Zoom, and being able to kind of correlate problems on a physical device, the local Wi-Fi signal strength, the ping time to your default gateway, the latency, the jitter, the performance of audio and video inside of these unified communications applications. Now, before I turn it over to Trent for a little bit of a demonstration, just a bit of housekeeping, just so you know, you're all on mute. We really appreciate your time and attention. We greatly appreciate the partnership with XenTegra. They're a phenomenal partner that can help support this technology. If you want to reach out to find out more about the licensing of the product, purchase, you can certainly contact your XenTegra account executive, or you can reach out to us here at ControlUp. If you do have questions during the course of the meeting today, feel free to leverage the chat or the question and answer application that is a native part of Zoom. We're going to try and keep an eye on that, and I'll kind of feed to Trent when there are certain areas that we want to make sure to cover. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Trent, and we're going to deep dive into the technology. That's enough of a sales pitch for you all, but we do appreciate your time and attention today.
Thank you so much, Justin. All right. So as we all know, remote work has become critical in our business. With the pandemic over the last few years, there was a big shift, obviously, for people to work remote. And, so there's been a bit of a shift to move back to the office, but remote work is now kind of here to stay amongst a certain class of employees. So it's important to be able to understand their performance, their home network, and stuff that surrounds that could impact their user experience when using applications that you guys are providing. So obviously I don't have like 4 hours to demo everything within ControlUp, so we picked 3 particular topics that we're going to circle around. So the first, I'm going to talk about Citrix, but we also support Horizon, Azure Virtual Desktop, remote desktop services. So if you use any of those EUC technologies, we support all of them. I'm just going to focus on Citrix for the purposes of this demonstration and time. And then I'll get into our physical endpoint monitoring a bit that Justin talked about, kind of show what that kind of looks like when we're talking about monitoring these remote devices that you manage from your organizational side. And then as well, dive into a little bit of the unified communication, give you guys a look as to what that looks like. And then coming out within the next few weeks here, we have ControlUp 8.8 that is going to have Azure Virtual Desktop and FS Logix monitoring integrated into the product. So I'll just give you guys a sneak peek as to what that's like, and I'll give you a quick link as to signing up for our beta if you are interested in that technology. Otherwise, you can freely download our product, and then once the 8.8 is released, we can notify you that it is available for update. So let's get started. I'm going to switch over to my machine here. So, all right, so what we're looking at is we're looking at a Citrix session. We're looking at our Solve product. So this is ControlUp Solve. It's our SaaS-based monitoring solution. This is the main page you land on, which is what we call our dashboard view. So this, you can see all the different widgets and stuff in here. You can completely customize this to however you want with whatever resources or sections of the company that you want to be monitoring. I used to come from a healthcare background, so there was specific applications that were on specific Citrix silos that we had, or specific Citrix siloed servers. And so, for instance, I could create a widget that would go through and actually just monitor that particular application, as opposed to grouping it amongst all of the environments. So we can see here among our dashboards, we've got 3 that come out of the box. So we've got the user experience dashboard here, which shows user-related metrics that are relevant to user experience. So things like how fast their logons are, whether they're consuming a lot of CPU and memory, their protocol latency, and so on and so forth. We also have the resources one. So this one is looking at the resource consumption of the objects within your environment. So whether that's your hosts, your virtual machines, processes, user sessions, etc., you get a really good idea for what the high-level performance is here. And so again, these high-level dashboards that we provide out of the box is looking at your entire organization. If you wanted to focus on one particular portion of your organization, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to look at my dashboard here, and I'm going to add a widget. And so this is where we can actually customize this dashboard. So we can add almost anything we want. In this particular case, I'm going to look at, let's say, our machines, and the resources I want our Citrix machines. So I will go and find them just by clicking on this. And specifically, let's choose one of our data collectors, and then we can choose what metrics we want to display on our dashboard. So I'm just going to pick a couple here that will show some level of data, and there you go. And so now we can actually even choose different widgets. Because I've chosen multiple metrics, I can only choose the multi-widget, because that's the only widget that supports showing multiple metrics, at least in this class of what I'm looking at here. And we can choose some other ones. You can see at the top, we've got the predefined ones built in, and we can actually change the scope. So that way we're only looking at a particular set, kind of like what I was describing earlier. And that would be by looking at the tree folders. So if I wanted to look at all the objects within, I could go, and this is a logical view that you design yourself. And we also have syncing scripts that can automatically create it based on your delivery groups, or if you're Horizon, your desktop pools, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to look at our XenApp PVS one here, and here I'll choose some other metrics to look at. Let's look at some Citrix ones. All right, let's look at like machines in use or maintenance mode. Do we have anything like that? Not entirely sure. No, not for those metrics, but you can get the idea. You pick it out, you can choose your scope, you can silo it by application or whatever's in your environment. So now I'm going to switch over to the discovery view. And this is where things get really fun and interesting. So you can see at the top here, we have what's called our topology bar. So this is a visualization of your environment. We automatically populate it based on the resources that you allow us to connect into. So if we can connect into Azure, we can pull out your subscription, all your resource groups, we can pull out costing information, stuff of that nature. If you're an on-premises user, then we can populate your data centers. We can populate your hosts, whether they're Hyper-V, Azure Stack HCI, sorry, Citrix, or yeah, Citrix Hypervisor, and Nutanix. So if I click on this guy, you can see we actually are looking at all of the clusters we have. But if I click on hosts, we can see all of the different hosts and all the different hypervisors that we support. So yeah, Hyper-V, HV from Nutanix, VMware, and Citrix. So all of the major ones. We don't have any Azure Stack in this particular environment, but we do monitor it as well. So I'm going to go into an example of troubleshooting and how our real-time product can actually help you troubleshoot in your environment. So looking at the hosts here, we can see, you know, all of my hosts, if I'm sorted by stress level, they all look pretty good, except for this one particular host. He's under some level of stress. And if I hover over it, I get this nice call out telling me why it's having stress. And so these are all things you define. We do have out of the box, we have it pre-configured for some generic stuff that we kind of found as an average across organizations. Of course, everyone is unique and different, so it does require some tweaking and tuning for your particular environment. But out of the box, this is the kind of stuff we would see. So we'd see that our data store read and write and IOPS is quite high. So if you want to explore this further, I'm just going to drag this to the right, and boom, we can immediately see the nice red popping out like a sore thumb, telling us that there is an issue here. So I can actually look at this little widget here, which I like to call glances. And when I click on it, it shows us how this was performing historically over a recent time period. I think it goes back to 72 hours. So we can see, you know, is this something that's been happening recently? Is this a recent change, or is this something that's happening that is new? And we can actually expand this out so we can actually look at more of this information with more metrics that we can actually look at in a larger time period as well. So this is pulling that data from insights. This is getting integrated directly into Solve. So got some great data here that we can actually review to see, is this problem expected, or is this you know, steady state? Is this normal? In this particular scenario, this is abnormal. We should not be having a high level of disk IOPS or disk read-write issues. So we need to explore this. And what I can do is I can click on these little arrows here, and this will actually drill into the host. So up at the top here, we can see I'm actually focused on this particular host, but looking at all the virtual machines underneath it. Underneath, you can see this little bar here has been highlighted. So it's actually a bit of a different color here on the top. If I scroll to the right, you can see it goes black. If I scroll back, it's got that little shade of bluish. So this is actually showing, because we clicked on those arrows, that we are interested in investigating a disk-related issue. And we actually say that right up at the top here. We're looking at a disk-related issue. And so within this host, within all these virtual machines, I can immediately see one virtual machine is causing my issue. So this RDS tools 22. And now new within Solve, I think in the last few months or so, we've added what's called Solve actions. So I can actually right click on this machine and I can actually take a corrective action right now. So I can actually reboot the machine. I can send messages to any users on the machine, you know, launch event viewer, anything that you might need to do in order to remediate this issue. Of course, that might remediate the issue temporarily because we haven't really root caused it, right? We're just executing some actions hoping that the problem goes away, but we want to root cause this. So we know it's a disk-related issue. We can see all these disk-related metrics, and we can see that they're quite high, obviously because they're red. So let's explore further as to what's happening. So to do that, I can continue to clicking on these arrows. So what I'm now is now I'm focused on this machine, still looking at the disk metrics. So I'm going to click on it now, and click on the user sessions now. And so now we're focused on the virtual machine and we're looking at all the user sessions underneath. You can see the user sessions is again grouped by disk related metrics. So super easy. to visually see that we've pushed all your troubleshooting metrics to the front here. So that way you don't need to scroll to the right like I was doing before. Once you're in the troubleshooting mode, we're putting all of those metrics up front. So we can see that this one particular user is causing our issue now. I still don't know why, but at least I've identified the user. I don't need to reboot the box anymore because now I can take corrective action on this particular user. I can, again, right click on them. I can force them to log off. I can disconnect them. I can send them a message. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a screenshot to see what they're doing. This is all customizable, of course. So you can see I'm taking a screenshot without notifying the user, but you can actually disable or lock down these features if you're in an environment like healthcare or finance or something like that, where you either need user approval or disable it entirely if that's something that is required. In this particular case, I'm just going to get a screenshot here. So I'm going to click on the more info button. Boom. So now we can see we're looking at what this user is experiencing or what this user is doing. They're running a program called IOmeter. Now I can Google this. I can find more information about it, what's going on. And when I do that, I find that IOmeter is an application that actually tests your disk storage subsystem. This demo was actually brought to us by a customer who was encountering this exact issue. We thought it was great, so we were able to integrate it into our environment for our demos. So what we can do here, we can take a screenshot, we can have it auto update, we can just refresh it on demand. But it essentially gives us a bit of shadowing within the ControlUp Solve product. So very cool. So now that I've figured out what the program is that's happening, I can actually click on the user. So this focuses on them. And then if I click on processes, this drills within the user's processes. And so now we're looking at all the processes within this user session. And sure enough, the disk metrics are coming to the front, and we can see that dynamo.exe is our issue. It's the one that's generating all this load. So this individual process was generating so much issues within our environment that it filtered all the way up to the hypervisor level. So we were able to look at the hypervisor, see this particular issue, and start to drill in and understand what's happening in our environment. And with this, we've now discovered the root cause. It's this program that this user happened to be running. And I can actually right click on this process, and we can actually do some kind of management to it. So again, I can end the process. I can kill the process. We can actually change process priority. So if we wanted to reduce it so it's not impacting other users, like, again, working in healthcare, we had users who would log in at the end of the day and they would run reports, which would query various databases, put it all together and throw it on a file share. And it was an intensive process. And when they run that at the end of the day, it would start impacting other users. So what we could do is we could identify this particular process. If it's running after this particular time, we can automatically lower the process by using our trigger system to do so. But if we wanted to manually manage it, we can do it all through ControlUp Solve. So very, very cool here, all the stuff that we can do. So actions on processes, cool stuff. So that's kind of an example of how our real-time product works, pulling you data in real time. You could see all those metrics are getting updated. This really helps with understanding correlation, like cause and effect. When a particular user logs onto a machine and they execute some action, if you have to wait 15 minutes, 30 minutes for that data point to get cycled somewhere, so you can see what the impact is, I mean, you lose that cause and effect over time. So the fact that we can actually see things happen in real time and take action and then see the response of that in real time gives you that confidence that you can understand what you do impacts your environment and how it impacts it. So one of the things I want to get into is that remote work imperative. So when we were talking about remote work and how important it is, we've included some amazing technologies within ControlUp that can help there. So I'm looking at obviously all my user sessions. Again, if I click the drop down here, we can see I can look at all my sessions, including Horizon, AVD, etc. I can look at ones that only have sessions that are being pulled from machines that have an agent installed on them, so we can get the real-time data, or I can just look at the Citrix sessions that are getting pulled from our Citrix broker. And then, like I was saying, with Horizon, we can actually swap between the two if we so chose. But here we can see a list of all of our user sessions, and we can see, there's some level of stress amongst them all. This particular user is the one that I'm going to pretend is called in. He's got a help desk ticket. They've complained that their user performance is poor, and it's been poor for weeks. They have no idea what's going on. Fortunately, we just installed ControlUp in our environment, and so now we can actually understand in more detail what's happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this user. And now you can see at the top, we're focusing on this user. We've installed what's called Remote DX. So this is an extension to the Citrix Workspace app or Citrix Receiver or Horizon Client or the Microsoft AVD client. And what this extension allows us to do is it allows us to pull local information about what's going on in the user's device to ControlUp. We consider this very unintrusive because it's only ever active if they have a session. The data that it pulls, you can see here, is very troubleshooting oriented. It's not Big Brother-ish. It's very much, to help and assist in this way. And since it's not monitoring it 24/7, it's only when the session's active. We consider it, again, very, privacy focused, unintrusive. So in this particular user, we can immediately see that there's a problem here. We can see we've got this beautiful topology that shows how their network, their local network, is operating all the way to the Citrix server. So this device that looks like, they're running Mac OS. We can see that right here. We're pulling Mac OS. They've been inactive for about an hour and a half. First off, their Wi-Fi signal strength is very weak. 56% is not great. And that is obviously impacting their NIC speed. So we've calculated the NIC speed to be about 47 megabits when the Wi-Fi signal strength is 56% for this particular user. This is their Wi-Fi SSID, so they're connected to a Wi-Fi called T-Home. And then the big ones that help us identify what's going on is we can see that first hop, the LAN latency. So we monitor the very first hop. We monitor the network performance to the default gateway is 207 milliseconds here. So that essentially becomes the floor that this user can operate at. So we can immediately see that, hey, there's something wrong with either your device or your Wi-Fi router. 200 milliseconds for a floor for a first hop is really, really bad. So that would be a very good explanation as to why they're having poor experience. And if you take that step back and think about how you would troubleshoot this without ControlUp, pinging the default gateway may not be on your list because it seems so obscure to think about, but you might ask the user to, upgrade their ISP. So they phone their ISP, they upgrade it. It hasn't been fixed. Okay, well, let's send them a new laptop. That didn't work. Okay, well, let's send them a network cable to plug in. Okay, they tried the network cable, but that didn't work. And why is that? Because it's all about their first hop, this device. They need to replace, in this particular case, their router that they're using. So we can see that first hop, 207 milliseconds, is quite poor. We're adding a new feature coming out right away that's going to monitor the ISP latency as well. But for today, we actually ping Google. So the Google DNS servers, they're geographically dispersed around the world. And we use it as a good proxy for internet speed. And so here we can see we're getting about 238 milliseconds to Google. Makes sense. 200 milliseconds being the floor from the router, 238 to Google. And then here we can see our Citrix server adds another 100 milliseconds. So performance should be about 100 milliseconds to our Citrix server if the gateway was performing properly. Since it's not easy to identify what the issue is, bang, we can get this user issue resolved. No guess and test. Amazing technology. And again, this works for Citrix, Horizon, and both remote desktop services, the classic style, and Azure Virtual Desktop. All right, cool. So that is remote DX. So I'm going to just get into some of the features that we offer for within Citrix. So you can see here in the topology bar, we are also pulling the metadata regarding Citrix and all the different things around Citrix. We don't just support on-prem Citrix, we also support Citrix Cloud. So you can see we've got Citrix Cloud resources here in our delivery groups, along with our on-premises Citrix deployments as well. We can take corrective action here. So if you were doing a migration, like an app migration, and you're stood up a new delivery group because you're migrating sites at the same time or something like that, we can actually take a right click on this and we can do some level of action and management action within ControlUp. If you ever use Citrix Studio or the Web Studio, you might have experienced some slowness with that particular solution. So being able to actually execute the actions within ControlUp, within this single pane of glass, is very nice without having to move to all these other tools. So very cool stuff. I'm just going to shift over now to EdgeDX. So this is our physical monitoring action.
Before you change off of this slide, there was a question about having a hard time being able to see your screen. Do you have the ability to zoom in on any of these corners and show Solve just a little bit in a zoomed in fashion?
Yeah, I can zoom it in like this. Does that help?
Yeah, great. And then just if you can just very briefly show like that remote connection with the Google delay.
Sure. Yeah, you bet. Actually, I'll try to show the visualization in another way too. If I can, I need to get out to my bar here. All right. So you saw that particular one. I'm going to switch to our remote DX metrics that are out of the box. So these are remote DX metrics, looking at the client device score. So this is another way of visualizing it. Before I clicked into it, which showed the user session as focus. Here, I'm going to keep this as focus, and we're just going to look at this particular display. So I'm just going to zoom in here. You get all the same information, but this is remote DX specific when we click on this. So we can get that quick call out, and we can look at all of our different sessions and click through there. So hopefully this provides the visualization that you were looking for.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there you go. Cool stuff. Really cool technology. I think we're really, really proud of that specific one. So other things that we can do, actually, before I move on to the physical endpoints, I'm just going to switch back to the ControlUp console. So we have our legacy ControlUp console that we are shifting focus on. It's now going to be our configuration console in the future. And that's this guy here. And what we can do here is we can actually do things to enable the automation. So the automatic resolving of issues or resource reduction we can do through automation, things like that. So we actually execute that through our triggers and our script actions. So if I click on the triggers here, we can see we have these list of automations that we have within ControlUp. And we're going to be releasing more and more automations, again, based on working with our customers and the issues and challenges that they've had in their environment, and then our own experiences as well. So you can see we've got automations for Azure where we can actually power on, power off machines. And we have some really unique capabilities around that. We can change the disk type there. We can stop machines and deallocate them after a certain time with the condition that they have 0 sessions. So say after business hours, once a machine has rolled over to 0 sessions, we automatically shut it down, and we can do that within 3 seconds of that last user being logged off. Since you're billed in Azure per second, this is a very good way of maximizing your savings. Other products and solutions, you generally have to wait, 5 minutes, 10 minutes for its next cycle to see that no one has been logged off. But with us, it's immediate, 3 seconds after. We have these other ones as well, which I call sliding timeouts. We have the ability to adjust your idle and disconnect timeouts by using ControlUp to monitor that, as opposed to the group policy that you're probably used to. Very, very cool stuff, because now we can say, if you've got 4 hours idle and disconnect timer, we can say we want the disconnect timer to be 30 minutes and the idle timer to be 1 hour, but only after 5 p.m. So we can monitor all those particular sessions and do that. So how do we do that? And what does that look like? So I'm going to click on this particular one, is to edit. We get a nice little description of it. This is what our trigger name is. So it's a session trigger, and this is how we enable automation. So looking at the trigger, we've got the from state. So if we wanted to filter only on particular objects that meet a particular criteria, we can add a from state here. But since we want to monitor all objects, I don't have any, so we're just looking at any state, and then this is what we're looking them to change into. So we're looking for the idle time in this particular case, if it's 60 minutes or greater. And if the session state is either active or disconnected, then we've got our focus here in our schedule. So this is where the magic is that says after 5 p.m., we're going to be enabling this automation. And in this particular one, we're focusing just on our Azure Virtual Desktop environment. And here we can see we've got a script action called Advanced Session Lifecycle. And what it will do is if it detects the session is idle, it will move it into a disconnected state. If it detects it's disconnected, it'll move it into it'll log it off. So that's after 5 p.m. And then we've got another one here for after 6 p.m. So here we get a little more aggressive with our timers. Instead of 1 hour, we're now looking at 30 minutes. So at least if you're using cloud, if you're using Azure, you can kind of see how this can actually help accelerate users logging off, especially if they walk away from their machine at the end of the day. as opposed to manually logging off their session. This can help accelerate that log off, saving you costs and reducing the price that you're paying for cloud-based services. We have these other ones here. So this is an example of optimization. So we can use ControlUp and the triggers to actually optimize your environment. And again, this is useful for cloud because potentially there's potential here. You can shove more users on a particular machine, something to be really careful about, but it's certainly possible. So what these particular ones do is that they detect the session state. So if the session is in a disconnected state, we will actually execute some actions. So in this particular one, we're looking, was the session active and did it move to disconnected? And if it did, and we're looking at our entire VDI environment here, we are going to execute 3 actions. So number 1, we're going to adjust the process party based on the session state. We are going to trim the memory process working set, and we're going to send a action to our Slack channel telling us that, hey, it executed this optimization action on this particular user. So you can see we can also send RESTful API requests, whether that's to ServiceNow or Slack or Teams or whatever, we have that capability. And I'll try to show you what that looks like as quick as possible here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find one of our machines and I'm just going to RDP to it. Just make sure I'm not already on it so I know what session it is. All right, I'm not on this guy. Perfect. So let's RDP to this machine. All right. See if I remembered my password. Hey, so far so good. All right. So again, being a real-time product, we'll actually see my session pop up here once it's finished its connection. Might take a minute because with FSLogix, if you're familiar with FSLogix, if you have it set to single session mode, when you try to connect another session, it times out after 60 seconds because it can't connect to your VHDX file. So since I'm already connected, it's probably going to wait for that timeout. We don't have it set to log me off, so I should be able to push through anyways. And then we can take a quick look at the optimization that we have. Just to run on another thing real quick here, ControlUp is an excellent tool for troubleshooting logon duration issues. So especially if you're Citrix, Azure Virtual Desktop, Horizon, whatever. We did just recently add new AVD phases for VMware DEM. Working with one of our customers, we found that when DEM was configured in path import mode with asynchronous actions, it was actually delaying logons. So when we worked with them, we were able to discover what those phases were, and we added them to analyze logon duration. I don't have a demo set up to actually show that, but we'll be coming out shortly with a blog article that describes it. So I'll just show you what ALD looks like when it's run. ALD is short for analyze logon duration. So here you can see my session did pop up. So while this runs in the background, we're just going to take a look at the optimization. So looking at my session here, we can see it's consuming a whole bunch of resources. I'm just going to switch my process view here so we can get a good look at the process priority view. So we can see, this session is consuming, almost 600 megabytes of memory. All the processes are getting all their same cycles as everyone else. Now we're going to imagine that this particular user went for lunch, or he left at the end of the day, but he didn't log off. So eventually those idle timers moved him into a disconnected state. Again, being a real-time product, we can see immediately that the session moved to a disconnected state. So again, that cause and effect is very clear. We'll be able to see the memory working set get trimmed, and we'll be able to see the process priority get reduced. So this is saving resources on your machines, making them more free for other users to be able to work more effectively. So boom, we can see the process priority got dropped to below normal. So really, really cool. We've now optimized this disconnected session to minimize the impact of the users on this machine, so they get more CPU cycles. And we can see the memory working set got trimmed. So boom, we went from 600, 800 megabytes down to 300 megabytes. We've now freed up about 500 megs of RAM for any other user that might be on this machine. And of course, you might run into the particular issue where the user comes back and you want to cycle that back. So let's do that real quick. Okay, so this user is now reconnected. We will see that the state is now changed back to active. ControlUp notices that that change has occurred. And now what it's going to do is it's going to adjust its process priority all the way back to normal or what they were previously. The memory working set, we can see since it's memory management, we don't actually tell it to page anything back in. We just let Windows memory management handle that itself. So boom, you can see the process priorities all back to normal, all within seconds. Again, this is the power of the real time. I understand cause and effect. I can understand when we did this action, the automation kicked in and here's what it did. So very clear, very cool, very powerful. So I'm going to move to our physical endpoint monitoring now. So that's this particular icon. We do have other features within the product. We do track historical, and we also can execute synthetic transactions, whether that's logging in and testing your resources to make sure that they're available, whether that's a website that Justin was talking about before, or even your Citrix applications, your AVD applications or desktops, or your Horizon applications desktop. We can do all that with our synthetic monitoring tool. So this is our physical endpoint product. This is called EdgeDX. So this is for your managed devices. This is, those devices that are ideally, they can be domain joined. They don't have to be domain joined, but they're devices that you're managing and you want to have that 24/7 monitoring on it, and the ability to, screen remote control and things of that nature to troubleshoot your end user issues. So we find this a very compelling and powerful product. We support a whole bunch of different operating systems. You can see at the top, we support Mac OS, Linux, Windows, all of those type of machines. And for the Linux portion, that includes thin clients like iGel, like Stratadesk, things of that nature. So what I'm going to look at here is you can see we've got our managed devices, we've got our active applications, obviously various alerts and various online devices. We track all of that. You can see we actually map them globally. So we can actually see where all these devices are located. So we've got a couple in London, some in Florida, some over here in California, et cetera, et cetera. If we want, we can actually adjust this and get a little call out showing the performance of these particular areas. Excuse me. So I'm going to click on CPU load. And here we can see, our Florida one, we got quite a bit of green, but we also have some red. So if you're grouping, if you've got a lot of users working in one particular location, this is awesome for that high level view of, is Florida down, but is California working, or vice versa. So we can get a good view as to what's happening in a geographical sense. And obviously CPU load was one. We can look at Wi-Fi signal strength, network latency, user input delay is another really good one, because this one actually measures the user interactivity of your particular desktop as it's operating. So if you're accessing applications and you're getting delays when you're working remotely, user input delay will actually identify that for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the dashboard here, and we're going to get this nice call down telling us about all the different features that EdgeDX has available for a dashboard type display. Justin talked about we have Teams and Zoom dashboards now, so we can actually track your Teams or Zoom calls within your organization for how they're performing. So let's take a quick look at that. I'm going to click on the Teams dashboard. And no one's made a Teams call today, so let's expand this out to be this month. And boom, we can see we've got a few. We've got 4 calls, at least in our particular environment. Let me expand this out actually to last month. All right, we get a few more calls here. So each day we can see the status of the calls, whether they were poor, good, or failed, or so on and so forth. We can see over time we've actually improved our call quality. So we were actually able to identify some root issues in our environment and solve them, and we can see now we are getting consistently better calls. Going back to at least these dates, let's investigate some of these issues here that we can start to track. So I'm looking at Muddy Waters here. I can see their MOS score was 4.7. That's pretty bad. Hovering over top, we get this beautiful call out that explains why that data was generated in that way. We can see that they did have some screen sharing going on, and they did not get good performance out of it. 0.1 frames per second is more like seconds per frame at this point. We can see whether or not a screen share was initiated and so on and so forth. If I click on this identifying GUID here, this actually drills into what that call looked like. So if you had a meeting with multiple people, you'd see you can actually select the multiple people connecting into the individual service, the server that's hosting it. Since this is a peer-to-peer call, you can see, and we've got EdgeDX installed on both devices, we can actually see what their Wi-Fi signal strength was during the time of this call, all the way through it. We can see their internet service providers that was making that peer-to-peer connection. We can see the type of machine that this had. So this has a Teams version 1.6. So this one is an older version. So maybe something to investigate, that Muddy Waters had a poor call. It might be related to the Teams version, because we can quickly identify that it is out of date. We can see the devices that were used for making this call. So whether it was, if it's a headset or something like that, your output video or audio stream would be different. And then here we get the MOS quality. So this is a calculated score by Microsoft in this particular case that tells you what it interpreted the quality of this call to be. And obviously the big factors here will be the frame loss. That's insane. 93.5 is really bad. Really poor frame rate. And then obviously the video error correction, not so great. Now, if we want to know when this started to occur, we can scroll down and we get this nice timeline, this nice graph over time that talks about how long these particular calls were and what their metrics were while that call was ongoing. So here, we can see lots of network packets going in. The call audio throughput dropped out for Muddy Waters. Over here for our other user, it looks not too bad. We can see both of them actually have extreme cases of jitter. 200 milliseconds of jitter is massive. So jitter is, if you were to send a ping packet continuously to one particular source, and you'll see it go between 1 and 3 milliseconds or so, your jitter would be 2 milliseconds there. So here 200 milliseconds is telling us that, whatever connectivity it's going through, it's really struggling with maintaining consistency. Could very well be using that router we identified earlier. So continuing on, we can see again the video jitter coming out. Again, both users, this one's much more smoother. This guy had a bigger spike. So now we can use this information to start, formulating what could be the root cause of this and actually help this user out and improve their quality for next time. The most obvious low-hanging fruit here is just to upgrade their Teams version. So super simple. Other than that, potentially based on the frame loss, looking at their router as well. So that's the Teams dashboard. We've got all these other dashboards as well, where we're looking at end user activity, was the user active, were they idle for most of their time? Since we're tracking it on the endpoint, we get a more clear picture as to the user's activity, as opposed to if we were just tracking idle and active times in a Citrix session. Lots of people today, we've got multiple monitors. I might have a YouTube video going over here where I'm learning something in my Citrix session on this side. And you'd be seeing a long idle time on my Citrix session, even though I'm being active on my local machine. So we are able to track that within EdgeDX by using that. We can look at some network statistics based on your environment and all your different users. So here you can see some really cool stuff. We can sort it by internet service provider, how many devices the internet service provider has, the Wi-Fi signal strength, and so on and so forth. Again, grouped and categorized by all these different areas. Very cool stuff. I'm just going to go into our devices here and show you that we can do some level of remediation action now. So I'm going to just choose a particular desktop here. I'm going to just choose the C-Clear desktop. And here we've now drilled into the machine and we're actually exploring what's happening. All of these metrics, because they're remote, it's a lot harder to get that real-time information. So we're looking at this on a per minute basis. That's what our refresh interval is within ControlUp here. Here we can see, the CPU utilization doesn't ever seem to drop below about 25%. So if we wanted to find out why, we can hover over one of the data points. And if we click, we'll actually drill into this data point. And we're actually able to hover over top and get a screenshot or a snapshot of what was consuming the processes during that time. So in this particular case, 34%, 36%, 10% of it is the MS Edge WebView 2. So this user is probably running a custom application that is exposing the new WebView 2.0 interface to do whatever. So WebView 2.0 is also used by Slack. So potentially this could be a Slack process or Teams and so on and so forth. So very cool there. Obviously we can see that the memory utilization as well. I actually worked with a ControlUp customer who had disjointed machines, so not domain joined, and we had EdgeDX installed on all of them. And they were working for a restaurant, where they had chef PCs, the point of sale terminals, and so on and so forth. And what we found is that they were having lots of crashes in their environment, and we saw that they were out of memory. So without having that visibility to the machine, like it works fine when you're on it, you can control it, delete, and log in and stuff, and then just dealt with the application crashes. But with this, we were actually able to root cause that it was out of RAM, and actually got them to purchase new machines. Well, we didn't, but they took that information and purchased new machines in order to alleviate that issue. So same sort of metrics you can see here: Wi-Fi signal strength, network latency. We also track every so often a trace route of what that packet looked like when it was pinging the particular spot that you decide. So in this particular one, I missed it. Let me try a different one. Unfortunately, no detail there. That's okay. So we do trace routes as well. That shows you how long the packet took to actually get from point A to point B. Unfortunately, not cooperating with me today, but that's okay. And then you can actually take a look, is it my ISP, because was the packet being routed to the right spot, or did it go through a long hop through like Australia or something? So we do provide that level of information as well. It's really, really cool. But if I wanted to help this user, say they're having a problem with their application, maybe they need elevation to install some software, we can actually take actions on these machines. So we've got a whole bunch out of the box that you can use. We can run things like speed test in order to get their bandwidth based on their local speed test server, so that we can see, are they actually getting the bandwidth that's being advertised to them. We can do, almost anything. We have the ability to execute script actions based on PowerShell, based on Bash, based on command prompt, based on all the different languages that are pretty much out there. So really, really cool stuff. Here we can assist. In this particular case, I can send a message to the user. I can actually execute a remote shell. So this is really cool. And all this can be configured via role-based access controls. So they can all be disabled if you wanted. But, remote shell is really cool. So this connects into the particular user. Here we can see we actually get a command prompt, and you can actually execute and interact with the machine as if you were there. So this is kind of like remote PowerShell, remote command prompt, all remotely. So very, very cool. We can get PowerShell, so on and so forth. Here I'm just actually going to do a quick remote shadow. I'm not going to ask for consent, just so we can see what this looks like. And then boom, you connect into the desktop. We can now control the machine, do whatever action and activity we need to do in order to resolve the user's problem. Very, very cool, very, very quick. All it requires is the Edge DX agent. So super powerful stuff here. So just for my last couple of minutes here, I want to show you guys something new. So this is a little sneak peek about what we have coming around the corner here. So I'm going to switch to my other machine. And so this is what's coming with ControlUp 8.8. So we have all this cool technology we can integrate in with, the Windows machine, the Windows operating system on Azure Virtual Desktop. We can monitor Citrix and Horizon and so on and so forth. But new with ControlUp 8.8 coming in just a couple of weeks, we now have Azure Virtual Desktop deep integration. So here we can look at all the different resources, the host pool, the application groups, remote apps, all your different workspaces. We can look at expanded Azure costing metrics, so you can get a better view of what your Azure metrics are. In this particular case, I'm actually just going to look for one machine to show you our upcoming FSLogix integration as well. This has been a hot feature that people have been asking for. So once we have a machine selected, it's important to remember that FSLogix profiles are attached as disks. So if I click on, I need to focus on the machine, then I can click on this FSLogix one, and it shows me the disks that are attached. So in this particular case, this is my profile. You can see all the different metadata that we're tracking as well. We also track real-time metrics within the FSLogix profile. So as users are reading or writing to their profile, we actually track the individual profile performance. And again, we can take actions on these individual profiles. Some examples of actions that we have coming out. You'll be able to actually execute an action that will tell you what the largest consumers of space are on your FSLogix profiles. So then you'll be able to alert the user automatically or just take corrective action yourself. Really, really cool stuff. So I'm going to switch back to my slides now. All right. So if you wanted to get into the AVD FS Logix beta sign up with ControlUp 8.8, this is the URL you need to go to. Just put in your information there. It'll be available, I believe, next week. And then you'll be able to actually try this out, see what it's like, see what the metrics are in your environment, and so on and so forth. If you're an existing customer, feel free to sign up. If you're new and you want to try it out, feel free to sign up. But if you want stability as opposed to playing with new toys, just go to controlup.com and just download our existing one. This will be out in a few weeks, so you can get started at least with ControlUp and get familiarized with it today that way. So, we power the work from anywhere world. Us, XenTegra, we all are helping you and your organizations to be as effective and efficiently as possible. Again, like I was saying before, feel free to schedule a demo with us, download the free trial. We can help set up proof of concept, same as XenTegra. They can help you set up the proof of concept to prove out the technology, and then you guys can be rocking and rolling.
This is great. And we had many customers that we spoke to. The troubleshooting time, especially in the world of end user compute, where there are multiple components that contributes to the performance and effectiveness of the solution. There are many things, especially especially coming from the admin, or if you are looking from Horizon or Citrix or AVD, any of those things. There are many components that is involved, and a lot of time when your end users, they need experience. We have seen people blown away with the response that they get when they add ControlUp on the proactiveness and mitigating your reactiveness, and then going and giving you where you have to go and look for it. I have customers, they come back and say, well, why did we not talk about this before?
Perfect. I do got one question to try to answer here before time is out through Justin. So Justin was asking about monitoring services. Great question. Our existing solution today, we monitor processes. So we can actually monitor how processes are performing and whether or not they're active or not. Again, coming with the ControlUp 8.8 release, we are actually adding a new trigger type, and that is the ability to monitor services. So we will actually be able to monitor services now, and you'll actually be able to see whether the service is stopped or not configured. And if it's in that failed state, then we can actually take a corrective action to say start the service or so on and so forth. So another exciting new feature that's kind of coming out, and it's a big one, but it's kind of under the radar because we have so much new stuff.
And there's also the ability today in the product to be able to view it in controllers. You can stop and start services. You can see the differences between services across multiple computers, and you can trigger on process stop today. So there's customers today that are monitoring their services this way with our tool set. And just a note to everybody, we are doing a drawing for a couple of Amazon gift cards after the session. We'll take the attendee list and we'll notify the winners via email and get an address to send out your Amex gift cards. Thanks so much. Moen, do you have any closing remarks?
No, thank you. I just want to thank everyone for joining us and listening to the power and features of ControlUp. So we are looking forward to supporting you in your end user computing and digital transformation journey. So if there is anything that we can help you with, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll make sure we can get you your POC, POV, demo, anything that you need. We'll be more than happy to provide you a solution. Again, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.